So the sun is setting on the first day of NaNoWriMo. I have not written. I have not planned anything. This is going to be a chaotic month. So it is day 2 of what I am calling NaNoTryMo, aka NaNoWriMo for those of us who are too tired to do anything but just try. Am I doing NaNoWriMo? Kind of. I'm trying. I didn't really have a single project that it made sense for me to work on. I'm working on a few little things, but I'm not really working on one main project. I thought about trying to do NaNoWriMo for my novel Saltbirds, which I just started writing, but it just didn't make sense because I want to just write a few chapters and get those workshopped before I get too deep into the book. So it just felt pointless to try and do NaNoWriMo and produce a bunch of work that I probably wouldn't be happy with when I know that I need to take things a bit slower with this book. Plus I had a bunch of little side projects I'm working on, and I'm just not really trying to start or take on a new big project at the moment. I'm just doing a write every day challenge for NaNoWriMo, which is exactly what it sounds like. My goal is just to write every day, but I don't have a consistent project. On the NaNoWriMo website, I literally just, my project is just called Nano 2021, and it's just for me to track like how many words I write across the month. But editing counts. Will probably be quite a few days where I'm doing editing. So my main goal for Nano this year is honestly just to like get back into a regular writing routine. I've been struggling with this for months. Last year, starting in the fall all the way up until around June, I wrote more than I've ever written in my life. I was just writing all the time, producing a lot of work, and I was super productive. And when I finished Holding a Ghost in June, it's like everything just grinded to a halt and I completely lost the momentum to write, and I haven't really gotten back into it. I've definitely gotten a little better in the past month or so, but it's definitely been hard, and I feel like I haven't really finished anything or actually like gotten into a regular writing practice. My main goal for Nano is honestly just to try and get back into a regular writing process, and I'm doing that by trying to challenge myself to write every day. So at the moment I'm working on the first draft of a short story, which I think I'll actually finish today. So I started this story midway through October, and it was going super well for the first like 2 days, and it's like this happens with every story I write, where I start it and I'm like, this is going great, I'll be done this in like 2 days, and then I hit kind of a wall and I don't know how to wrap up the piece. I don't know what, maybe it was just like the magic of NaNoWriMo, but yesterday I didn't start writing until pretty late. I was super tired, I didn't have any motivation, and I've tried probably 4 times to get through the mid-story block and been unable to, and it just happened, and I wrote I think about like 1,400 words, so I only have 2 scenes left, so I think I should be able to write that today, and then we'll move on to other things. Obviously I'll want to revise it and stuff. So it's just a little bit later the same day. So I finished the first draft of Kilson. That's the name of the story, did I say that? Anyway, it's about a Puritan witch trial. So I'm gonna do a little bit of reading. I'm reading Matrix by Lauren Groff. I just started it yesterday, but it's so good. The other thing I want to do today is block out my revisions for my short story Tabula Rasa. My workshopped that a couple weeks ago, and I just haven't had a chance to edit it, so that's the next thing I want to do. A really weird thing has been happening this NaNoWriMo, which is that I've been really nostalgic for Holding a Ghost, which was my Nano novel from last year, and I wrote about half of it during Nano, and then I finished it this July. I haven't really looked at it since. I'm not really gonna start editing it until I'm done editing Honey Vinegar, so it hasn't really come up. I haven't been thinking about it too much. For some reason, like as soon as NaNoWriMo started, I've been really feeling nostalgic for Holding a Ghost, and I've been thinking about it a lot. Like suddenly I want to work on it so bad. I wrote a little new chapter for it the other day, and I've just been like missing that book a lot. I don't know if it's because it's been like a year since I started it, and I wrote it last November. I think that that kind of happens. Like I associate projects with certain times of the year and times of my life. Last November, that's what I was working on, and so it was a big part of my life. So I think it makes sense that I'm like very nostalgic for it now. So I feel like that's kind of happening now with Holding a Ghost, and I'm just missing it a ton, thinking about it a ton. I've been reading bits over, which I haven't really done since I finished it. I kind of just wanted to let it rest until it was time to edit it, and like suddenly that's all I want to work on. Today's update will be very quick, coming to you from my daily main character walk. It is raining and dark, the sun is about to set, but I just think that it's very main character of me. Not a super exciting day. I'm kind of doing editing projects for the next couple days, so it's hard to really track word count. Did a quick pass of the story I finished yesterday, Kill Sin. Don't think I'm gonna look at it for a little while. I just need a break from that story. It was really hard to draft. It's historical fiction. It required a lot of research. It was quite complicated and I don't think I've quite gotten it. Anyways, now I kind of want to turn to revising Tabula Rasa. I wrote the story way back in February and I just haven't had the chance to like workshop it and finally editing it now. I don't think it's gonna take too long, probably just a couple days depending on how much time I dedicate to it. I don't think I'm gonna start actually editing the book today, but I just want to like block out my edits and kind of outline them and make like a plan for everything I want to do. Hey guys, so it's November the 8th. I haven't done an update for this vlog in a while. I feel like this has been a very underwhelming NaNoWriMo. I really just feel like it's not that exciting for me. Like, I've written every day. I've been decently productive. I don't feel like I've really written like a ton every single day, but like I've been getting stuff done. But I feel like because I don't really have one project that I'm dedicating my time to, I feel like I haven't really gotten into like the mindset. This NaNoWriMo has been good for getting me to get stuff done. And I know that by the end of the month, I think I'll probably have gotten quite a bit done, but I'm not really feeling like in it. Like, I'm really feeling like connected to it, you know? And now I've been editing a short story that I wrote in February called Tabula Rasa. I'm almost done with that. I did all like the main edits, like writing new scenes and stuff. So today I think I'm gonna do some my line edits, and then tomorrow I'll kind of just like do any final adjustments, you know, like to really heighten and lift up any final like ideas and themes in the piece. And then I have some edits for a literary magazine. Originally my plan was, after I was done these short story tasks, to start working on more on my novel, my new novel Saltbirds, but I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I think at this point, like, I'm backlogged 2 novels. It's like I have revisions to do on Honey Vinegar and I have my first round of revisions to do on Holding a Ghost. I just feel like maybe I shouldn't be starting to draft a new novel. Like, I'd written the first chapter. I think I got a little overexcited and started writing it maybe before necessary. So I'm gonna try to like hold back and not do that. Instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to try and do all of the edits on the short stories in Pareidolia, which is my first short story collection. I think like this was on my to-do list. This has been on my to-do list for like 2 years, like over a year, which is to just finish editing all the stories in that piece. So there are a few stories that need more significant revisions. I need to rewrite Symbiosis, that's the big one. Most of the stories in that collection I've had published, but a lot of them are still pretty old. It's a relic of a style that I wrote in 2017. And it's not really reflective of how I would write now. So I do think I just need to make some adjustments in phrasing to the rest of the stories, like a line edit, but that's just like one pass on each one. So I think that's probably what I'm gonna focus on for the rest of the month, is just getting that collection done, because that's been on my to-do list for ages and I just haven't sat down and done it, even though it's not that much work. Like, most of the stories are pretty much done, and some of the stories really, I don't think, need any work. That was on my yearly goals, and so I think I'm gonna try and focus on that throughout the rest of the month instead of starting a new novel, because if I start a new novel, the process is just gonna get really chopped up and broken up by these other edits that I have to do on other novels. So I'm gonna hold off on starting that. I was really excited to start it, but I think now that I've written a first chapter, I'm like a bit more calm and I'm like, okay, I don't need to write this all immediately. My time would maybe better be served doing some other things. So in general, I don't have a super high capacity for producing work at the moment. I think I'm a fairly burned out person, and so I'm just not at super high capacity for a bunch of things right now. So combined with applying to grad school and work, I don't have too much left over to write every day. I do think that this has been good for like consistency. Like, it's getting me to get things done that otherwise would take a lot longer. I'm not really feeling like excited about it. Like, I don't really look forward to writing every day. Partly that's probably because I'm not drafting. I love drafting. Drafting is what I get excited about. So I think if I were drafting something right now, something new, something fresh, maybe I'd be having a better time with this. I feel like this NaNoWriMo is turning into more of a practical thing. Like, it's not really doing much for me emotionally or spiritually, but it is good for practicality's sake in that, like, I'm getting things done that I do need to get done. Maybe leave the month with just like a bunch of things off my like list of pending tasks. I don't know, I think it's a messy time for my writing. I have a lot of different things in the works at various stages, and so it feels a bit overcrowded. Like, I'm a little overcrowded with projects, which is why I think maybe I should put Saltbirds. I should just put a pause on Saltbirds, because that's just adding an extra project to my already very overcrowded writing life. Try and just get a bunch of stuff off my plate with short fiction. Hello, so it is day 10 of NaNoWriMo, but a nice little light spiral happening. So yesterday my goal was to finish editing Tabula Rasa. I'm almost done with that. I just decided yesterday that I wanted to give like one more day of space just so I could have like slightly fresher eyes. So I'm going to do my final pass of the story today. I'm very proud of myself because the draft that I submitted to my workshop was about 4,800 words. And then after I had done all my revisions, but before I'd started line editing it, I was at 5,600 words. And I was like, I would love for this to be below 5,000, especially because I want to use it for some of my grad school applications where they cap out at 5,000 words. And I was like, there's no way I would have to cut 600 words, and I feel like this story is already pretty minimal. I don't think that's going to happen, because I would literally be getting the story back down to the word count that it was at before I revised it. Like, that's not going to happen. And I did it. It's below 5,000. I'm gonna do one more pass of that this evening and submit that. Yesterday, I also wanted to do some edits for a literary magazine, but I literally opened the document and there were like so many edits that I just got overwhelmed and immediately clicked out of it. Like, there must be hundreds of edits in that document. And I have worked with many a literary magazine, and this is unprecedented. I've never had this many edits on a piece of work, even in university. I'm also moving projects now, so I just did a write-in for Readsy, and I started working on rewriting Symbiosis. Oh my goodness. This is a task that has been on my to-do list for years. So Symbiosis was one of the first stories that I ever wrote. I wrote it, it was my third story. I wrote it in my second year of university in February of 2017. I didn't know what I was doing, and at the time it was my favorite story I'd ever written, but let's be real, at the time I'd written 3 stories and I was very proud of it, and I didn't think I would ever write something better. And it was my first published story. It didn't take long before I realized that that draft is not the strongest. So I've known that I had to rewrite this piece for years, and I just haven't gotten around to it. It was one of my yearly goals for 2020, and I didn't do it. And one of my yearly goals for 2021 was to rewrite Symbiosis and finish editing all of the stories in Pareidolia, which is my first short story collection. About last month, I was like, well, that's not gonna happen. Like, I don't have time to do that. And then I was just like, no, I actually can do it. Let's get this done. Let's power through it. Part of the reason why I've been procrastinating this Symbiosis rewrite is because in my mind, it needed a dramatic reframe. And I didn't really know what that would be. Like, in my mind, it needed a completely new structure, maybe a completely new style, like everything needed to be dramatically different. And I didn't really know what that dramatically different thing would be, right? Like, when I rewrote Melting Point, I changed the point of view and I just had a completely new way of reframing the story. But I didn't really have that with Symbiosis, and I think I've been struggling with Symbiosis. I've been like, what is the point of this story, right? Like, what is it saying? What are the themes? Like, what am I saying about this character? I feel like I've been waiting for some kind of revelation about this piece, which isn't gonna happen. Like, you know, this piece was my favorite story at the time I wrote it. I was planning to expand it to a novel. I'm fairly lukewarm on it now. Like, I need to just take a simpler approach, rewrite what I have, make it strong. Don't worry about completely reframing the story. I think this can be an effective story if I just rewrite it with a stronger structure and style, because I was just working on rewriting it now, and what I noticed is, first of all, the prose is ridiculously overwrought. It's very confusing. When I wrote that story, I felt like I had kind of found my style. It was the first time that I'd written something that felt very like dreamy and almost fairy tale-like, and for a period of time that was kind of like my style of story. Like, I felt like I wanted my whole collection to have that kind of feel. I wanted everything to be in this like hazy dreamscape kind of. I thought that that was kind of my niche. And the prose was very tangled and confusing. I can see this in a lot of the stories that I wrote in 2017. The language is very strangely structured. Like a lot of the sentences are like weirdly inverted. There's just a lot of imagery that like doesn't make sense. There's just very like awkward ways of phrasing things. I don't know. I was in a certain style. The story is so much stronger already with the prose just like streamlined. The other thing is that I'm noticing is just how much narrative slack there is. First scene begins with the main character in the hospital. And then in the second scene, he's walking home. And then in the third scene, he gets home again. That scene of him walking home does nothing. It's a long scene, several pages long, and it literally accomplishes nothing. Like, I think I saved like 2 sentences that I wanted to relocate into other scenes. So there's so much narrative slack. Underneath all the ridiculous stuff, there's a good story in there, but it's really buried in a lot of narrative slack and tangled prose. So I don't think that this is as big a task as I thought it was, which is why I've literally been putting it off for years. I think for the rest of the collection, it's really not going to take that long to polish. There is one story that needs some structural edits, Darling, I Fear for You. It's a very short piece, but I've just not been able to get it in place, so I think that will be a tricky one. The rest of the stories really just need line edits. Like, I just want to comb them over. Some of them, the ones that were written later, like Cherry and Jane in the Garden of Eden, or that were published more recently, like, you know, like Beautiful Animal or Hold Me Under Till I See the Light, those were published late last year. They barely need anything. Like, I'll just read them over, right? The only thing is Cherry and Jane in the Garden of Eden, I'm gonna change the ending a little bit. Not a ton, like it'll end the same way, but nobody gets the ending of that story. I thought that it was extremely obvious, the ending, but literally nobody gets it. Like, clearly it's not as obvious as I thought it was. No one gets the ending. When I explained the ending, everyone was like, what? Once my family was talking about it, and they were like, yeah, I don't think that that ending makes as much sense as you think it does, Shaylin, because literally none of us got it. The only person who gets that ending is my brother. My brother was there, was like overhearing, and he was like, you guys didn't get that? It's literally so obvious. And I was like, thank you, Jake. I also thought it was so obvious, but clearly it's not. Especially the older stories, like I was looking at Barefoot the other day, and I haven't read Barefoot in years. And I was like, what is this prose? And it's similar, because I also wrote that in 2017. It has similar issues as Symbiosis, but a little less bad, where there's just so much weirdly structured phrasing. Like, I do want my whole collection to be like in a cohesive, strong style. I want each story to have its own voice. I want to keep the intentional aspects of the voice, you know, like the really dreamy, hazy aspect of Symbiosis, and the more like straightforward aspect of I Will Never Tell You This, and the very like bright, chaotic voice that's in Barefoot. But then I want to get rid of and iron out all of the stylistic stuff that wasn't intentional and was just kind of like the phase that I was in at the time. And I mean, obviously, like, you go through phases with style. I'm sure that I'll go through more phases with my style as I continue. There are things that I was doing with my style at the time that I might almost want to keep, and it's interesting to have that like time capsule of my prose, but there are other things that I was doing with my style at the time that I think are just harping the stories, bloating them and overly convoluting the phrasing. Like, I want to keep the voice of each individual story while ironing out the weird quirks that my voice from that time period had, you know? It's not going to be that intense, and some of the stories were worked on much more recently, and I don't think really need that much. Like, really the big ones are Symbiosis and Darling, I Fear for You, and everything else should take one pass, basically. And then I will have a short story collection, and it will be done, because this was my yearly goal, and I procrastinated it for way too long. Hello. So yes, it is absolutely pouring rain out. I'm just gonna film a final clip for this vlog right now as I'm walking home from the grocery store, just so that I can go home, upload the clip, finish editing this vlog, and post it tomorrow. So yesterday was probably the best, most productive day of my NaNoWriMo so far. Probably because I started writing much earlier in the day, because I wrote during my work day since I was doing the write-in. I did one more pass on Tabula Rasa. I submitted it. And I also started doing the edits for that literary magazine. There are like hundreds of edits, but what I basically did was I just went through and I accepted all of the edits that were super small. They were like deleted a word or moved a word, but the remaining edits are like the things I actually have to go in and adjust. So it's a bit less overwhelming because there aren't like just like tons of comments that are like very minor things. And I did a lot of work on my symbiosis rewrites. I actually did the full first draft. Basically what I did yesterday was I rewrote the whole story. I kept the same structure for now, just because I don't really know what changes I would need to make to the structure. Rewrote all the prose that I didn't like and cut all the stuff that didn't need to be there. The draft that I was working with, the old draft, was 6,400 words. My new draft is 3,400 words, so I literally cut 3,000 words just because there was so much pointless shit and so much stuff that was just not good. I feel like I had to cut all the crap from this draft in order to get like the bones of it. The general structure of the story is good. I don't want to change the plot too much. However, I have some beef with this story because I feel like I don't like the ending. Basically, I feel like there are multiple threads, but they never really like come together to say anything cohesive. There's a lot of symbolism that doesn't really amount to anything. I don't really like the ending. I feel like it's way too sentimental. I was surprised at how much stuff was in the draft that felt very out of character for the main character, because like, how did I not notice at the time that I was editing this story extensively that some of his dialogue was extremely out of character? I don't know. I basically now have the bare bones of the story. I have to find, I think, a different approach towards the ending, because the ending is really, it's like not an ending, it's the result of the things that happen in the story, really. I think what I'm gonna do with those 3,000 words of space that I cut is try to use that to find like new nuances to the story, because it felt like I didn't lose any nuances to the story by cutting those 3,000 words, right? But I have so much more experience writing since I wrote that draft that I think if the story ends up being 6,400 words, which I don't care, like if the story ends up long, I don't care, like I'm not going to submit it, it's just going in my collection. I think that I can get a really complex, rich story out of 6,400 words, whereas before, half of the words in that draft weren't doing anything. I'm going to, I think, relocate a lot of the stuff that was in, that I'd planned to go in the novel, which I used to plan to write this as a novel, which I'm not going to do anymore, I don't think. So I just got home and I started editing that clip. From that point onwards, you couldn't hear me because the traffic was way too loud. So I'm just going to end it off here. What I was saying at that point is that I might take a bunch of stuff that I'd planned to put in the novel, which I'm not going to write anymore, and integrate that into the short story. I think that that would be a good use of that content, which I've written and I'm probably never going to use. You know, I was for years planning to expand this story into a novel, but with time I think I don't need to, because I think the reason I wanted to expand it to a novel is because I had all this extra stuff I wanted to do with the characters. But now I can see that I can do all that stuff that I planned to do in the novel just in the short story. That short story was 6,400 words, and most of those words didn't need to be there, so I can just cut them and replace them with much better words and hopefully end up with a much better story. So, but that is really all for this part of the vlog. It's very chaotic. It was a mess. I don't know, you know, if you actually watch my vlogs, thank you. Know that they're an absolute disaster. I would love to know how your NaNoWriMo is going. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can always send me an ask on Tumblr, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!